I'm not feeling very humorous today, so I might not be doing a comedy routine, but that's something that you can probably look forward to in the near future. Excuse my hair, it's a mess, I know. Anyway, we're going to be talking about autism and ADHD, which I have both, which means I am an aficionado of the subject. Aficionado meaning the Encyclopedia Britannica. Yes, I'm the walking, living example of what ADHD and autism looks like, and it looks like a mess, doesn't it? I look like a mess. I am a mess. I don't care. I don't care right now. Just gonna make this video. I don't care if I'm not glamorous. Hey, I'm not doing makeup tutorials here, okay? I'm not even wearing makeup. I don't like makeup. I have I have really sensitive skin, and I can't wear makeup, and it just doesn't feel natural, and I don't know how to wear makeup because so I didn't start. I've never started, and it's kind of hard to start. You know, when you start, it's hard to stop, but when you haven't started, it's hard to start. That makes sense. Okay, now let's get into this, shall we? So, as I said in a previous video, ADHD has two different personalities. Two different personalities. Uh, One is going to be really outgoing and happy and optimistic. The second one is probably going to be pessimistic, kind of an Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Sometimes it's a very realistic, like you're a very realistic person, but sometimes it's very pessimistic and sarcastic, and it's maybe not a happy person. So there's some people that believe we have three different personalities, like the one that we show to people, the true self, and then I don't know what the third one is. The third one's probably the one that you have at home. So the one you have at home, the one you have in public, and then your true self. I think that's from a Chinese proverb. But enough of that. That's probably going to confuse you. And I don't want you to be confused. So I guess I'm feeling a little bit more humorous, I suppose. I could probably get into some stand-up. I'm not really gonna stand up, but it's still stand-up. I asked this question actually not too long ago. I think it was on TikTok, the days when I actually liked TikTok. I don't anymore. So I was on there and I was like, "Are you still a stand-up comedian if you don't stand up?" And like what if you're disabled? What if you're in a wheelchair, or you have cerebral palsy or something, or you're in a walker, and somebody came to my rescue and said, "Yes, you're still a stand-up comedian if you don't stand up." So I'm not required to stand up. I'm disabled. No. Actually, there's nothing wrong with my body. At least I don't think so. I mean, I can walk in a straight line most of the time. Occasionally I will run into furniture. Um, yeah. Sometimes I will try to go through walls, which doesn't work out well because I have not learned how to go through walls yet. So, um, hopefully I'll learn how to do that in the future. I don't know. Have you figured that one out? No? I think it's in a molecular space thing, like two things can't be in the same place at once. It's a maybe that's a scientific anomaly of some sort. If you're a science nerd, you know exactly why that doesn't work. But with all the technology and the science that we have, that we've learned, I think you should be able to do that by now. But well, I think maybe I'm an alien from a different planet, and in my planet we actually go through walls. So that's why I have tried to do that so many times. Have you ever done that? Have you ever I've done this before. So, like, you're busy. So here I am. I'm on my phone. I'm like, I'm on my phone, and I do that, and then and I look up, and I look down, I look up, and then I look down, and then I just decide to look at my phone for a long period of time. As I'm doing this, I'm approaching closer to an object. This is where my survival skills kick in. So I'm getting closer to this object. It happens to be a car. It was in park, thank goodness. If it wasn't, I'd be in trouble. And so as I was doing this, my head was within the back of the car was within like this close. So what I did is I ducked. I went like this. And I it wasn't a duck, it was more of just like a side duck thing. So I did that and I missed the car. Yeah. It's great times with ADHD and autism. It's fantastic. Um, I remember when I was a little girl. This is actually a very fun. This is a short story, I promise. So I was a little girl, and I used to like constantly run into things. I don't know how I did it. I don't remember how this happened. I guess I was just kind of a tom girl, and I would just run into things, and I would have at least 3 or 4 bruises on either knee, and my grandmother looked down, who was raising me at the time. She looked down and she said, "People are gonna think that I beat you. Look at those legs. Look, you got bruises all over them. Where'd you get them?" And I'm like, "I don't know. They're just there." "Well, they're gonna think that I'm beating you." And I just looked at her and I went, I said, and she's like, "That's not funny." Yeah, it kind of is. And I just and then, of course, she couldn't get mad at me because I was this cute, goofy kid with big eyes, and so she just kind of, brushed it aside. She went, she made that face. She went, "Kids, kids, some people's children," she would say. That's what she would always say. Because I was somebody else's child. I was her daughter's child. That's how she became my grandmother. That's how she became my grandmother. Yeah, she's actually related, unfortunately. So, yeah, I was not a very I did not have a lot of spatial awareness when I was younger because I just I didn't have that, and I didn't realize that it was part of ADHD or autism because I knew I had ADHD when I was about 4 years old, but I didn't know about the autism until I was 13. So, yeah, it's the spatial awareness thing, and not having spatial awareness hurts sometimes. It's pain. I mean, I love having these super abilities and having a super brain, but like every once in a while that happens, that a lot gets me to stub a toe. Yeah, that's where it's painful. It's painful. I was one time. Oh, this actually happened recently. This was fun. This was fun. So I have an inflatable bed, okay? I'm not gonna get into why I have an inflatable bed. It's a long story. So I have an inflatable bed, and it has this pump in it, and it pumps itself up. I got the bed at Walmart for like $60. I exchanged it for another one, and that was, see, I had a cheaper one, and I exchanged it for a more expensive one, and I only had to spend $12. And I've done this about 3 times. And a lot of people are marveling at that. They're like, "Wait, you can do that 3 times at Walmart?" Yeah. Now the freaks can really come out at night when they find out that they can exchange things 3 times. Yeah, as long as It doesn't have to be the same product. It can be a similar product, like the same kind of item, but it can be a different brand, and all you have to do is pay the difference. It happens. So I did that, and I was blowing up my bed, and I turned, so I had the bed, it was all laid out, and I flipped the switch, and as I was doing this, I was being very vigorous in the process of laying out the bed, because you have to after you fold it up, you have to lay it out. So I laid it out, and as I did that, I decided to, for some reason, be Hercules and just throw this corner of the bed. And mind you, the pump is still in the bed. It's still in there. You can take it in and out and charge it. And as I did that, it landed right on my toe. Right on my toe. That was the most painful thing, actually. I mean, you know, when you stub your toe, it like hurts and it stings, and then it, you know, hurts and then throbs, and then it's gone. You know, you do a little dance, a hokey pokey dance. You go, and then it's gone. This was not the case with this. I think I bruised my bone. I bruised my bone. I was like, so here I am. I'm stomping. I'm doing this little stomping dance. And thankfully, no one's really paying attention in the living room as I'm doing this. And finally, I'm like, ouch, that hurts. And it continued to throb and burn and sting and throb and burn and sting over like for 10 minutes. And it was a little bit swollen too. I had a swollen toe. And it hurt. And I didn't like that. So yes, ADHD and autism hurts a lot sometimes, because you don't realize how close things are to your body. It's not so much that you don't know where things are. Of course I know where things are. It's like the concept of time. You know, it's like the concept of time. You know, people with ADHD often don't have the concept of time, and it's kind of funny. It's like, oh, yeah, you can look at a clock and you know how to read it. Of course you do, but at the same time, what you don't have concept of is how much time has passed since the last time you looked at the clock. So that's one of the things. So it's not like you look at a clock and you go, duh. It's not like that. It's not one of those things. And no, that is not a stereotype. That is not, I was not being ableist, by the way, because a lot of people, this is the thing. This gets my goat. This gets my goat. Okay. So let's say somebody with cerebral palsy, I've seen them. They're fantastic people. And, you know, they have a hard time walking sometimes. You know, you've noticed that. And I'm all for disabilities, any kind of disability, because I live with autism and ADHD, and my grandmother was disabled, so I totally sympathize and empathize with people that have to deal with that. And, you know, so if somebody gets out of their car with cerebral palsy and they're late for work, say, and they say, hey, I'm sorry, I had to park all the way on the other side of the parking lot. I didn't get here in time. I hope that's okay. And they'll just look at them and they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's fine. That's cool. I'm sure it was really hard getting out of your car. Yeah, it was. It was really hard getting out of my car. Like, it was all the way on the other side of the parking lot. Like, there was no other spaces. And, you know, they'll say, well, there's some disabled parking. Oh, yeah, I should have parked there. Yeah. It's okay. We'll do that next time. But you get somebody that's able-bodied like me. Okay. I don't work right now, but let's say I did. Let's say that I do have a job. So I went and parked all the way on the other side of the parking lot. Okay. Did the same thing. Walked all the way from the parking lot to my work and said, I'm sorry. I got, I was all the way on the other side of the parking lot. It was really hard and difficult. I had to gather all of my stuff together and make sure I had everything. And so suddenly I got really distracted. So um, yeah, I'm really sorry that I'm late. Uh, it won't happen again. What's gonna happen? I'll tell you. What on earth took you so long? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, what's going on? Like, uh, did you leave the house when you should have? Well, no, I didn't. I thought I did. Obviously not. Like, you should have had everything in your car and you should have gathered everything before you left your car. Like, why is it that you are so slow? Like, did you forget your medication? Are you off medication? What is going on? Because this is an ongoing issue right now. And, well, I have ADHD. ADHD? Yeah, well, yeah, I understand that. But the thing is, this is an ongoing problem. It's an ongoing issue. Like, every time you're late for work. And I cannot make exceptions. If I were to make exceptions for you, I'd have to make exceptions for everybody else. And I just can't do that. Okay. But the other person that came in here, oh, that person, she has cerebral palsy. Okay. She's got a disability. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, you're completely able-bodied and you can do more. You are capable of so much more, if not, uh, you know, more able-bodied. You should be able to get out of the house and get across the parking lot to this building on time. Okay, cool. Yeah, that is, I am not basing that on experience, but I'm basing it on other people's experience who have told me about their work. And that is what the bosses sound like. They sound like that. And that is totally ableist behavior. They don't see it as ableist because they often see themselves, they'll make exceptions for disabilities that can be seen, but not for disabilities that are invisible. So that is a very strange kind of ableism. That is like literally a racist person, like, that will allow somebody will allow an African American with lighter skin to come in and use the bathroom. But if Idris Elba shows up, they'll be like, you have to go next door. That's literally what that's like. Looking at somebody who's not able to walk in a straight line and then looking at somebody who can and just assume that they don't have any issues. That's literally that's literally the same thing. So you would not yell at a person who was crippled or who couldn't walk and they're going slow. You would just say, "Hey, take your time, whatever." But you see somebody that's able-bodied, people will just scream at them. They'll be like, why are you so slow? Like, why are you doing this? You're holding up the line? You don't have any spatial awareness? Like, are you on drugs? Are you stoned? Did you get off medication? Are you on it? I mean, what is the deal? Because you just, like, seem to be, like, really lazy. You're not on time, and I'm fucking sick of it. And it's just, like, it's this ableist behavior, and this is called disguised ableism, which is literally where they will make exceptions for people that they think are disabled, but will totally take a shit on another person who is not who is disabled, but does not appear to be so. And just because you can't frickin' see something does not mean that it does not exist. So this is a dangerous ableism. This is an ableism that is hidden, very much like racism is hidden today. And I could go on, I could talk about racism, I really could. but I'm not going to. Maybe I will. Maybe I will at the end of this video. But that kind of ableism is very dangerous. It's toxic because, and it is a lot of the times in workplaces. And I've heard so many times stories from young mothers and people who decide to get into a disabled parking place. So there was this woman that had 3 autistic sons, very severely so, waving their arms, hitting themselves. I'm sure some of them were nonverbal as well. She took her sons out of the car and proceeded to go into the store, and she parked in the disabled spot. This woman, of course, a Karen, showed up out of nowhere and says, "Why are you taking that parking spot? You don't look disabled." "I'm not disabled." "Well, then you shouldn't be taking the parking spot then." Finally, the mama bear kind of is activated at this point. She said, look, my sons are nonverbal autistic. They are disabled. So I have every right to park there for my sons. And yeah, she just let this lady have it. It might have been a man. There was my ADHD again. So yeah, this kind of ableism is very frightening and very scary because we are as I said, we would never yell or scream at an old man who is struggling with his cane. You wouldn't kick it out of his, you wouldn't pull the cane out of his hands and kick them, throw them on the side of the curb, would you? No. That could be your grandpa, that could be your father, that could be your uncle, it could be your brother, it could be somebody that you know. And you realize, oh, that could be you, some years into the future. You get into a car accident or you have a stroke or a heart attack or anything, any number of things could happen, and that could be you. You could be in a wheelchair, you could be with a cane, you could be in a situation where you're not able to walk in a straight line. And with arthritis, which is a guarantee for a lot of us, for both men and women, it's inevitable that we get arthritis, and arthritis can be very crippling and very painful. And so you make exceptions for people like that because you don't want to be a terrible person, and you want to help somebody that is maybe crippled or has the inability to be mobile or to walk or move around. But you would yell at somebody who seems to be struggling and is going a little bit slower, even though they don't have any sort of physical disability. A disability is a disability regardless if you can see it or not. Don't make exceptions for somebody who is obviously disabled. Somebody with a shriveled arm, or somebody that has an amputated leg. Don't you can make exceptions for that person by all means, but don't turn around and then say, where the hell were you? Getting ready, working hard, listening to everything you said. So a lot of these people kind of just look at us, people with ADHD, as lazy. They see us as being not applying ourselves, even though we are working 10 times harder than probably the other employees, because we're dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and we're dealing with the fact that people don't seem to understand, and we get yelled at and abused and harassed and just verbally attacked every single day. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing for anybody to have to experience and have to go into a workplace that is toxic like that. You cannot decide. This is the way it is. If you support any group of people, I don't care what it is, you support them completely. You do not have, I don't think you should have the room. So if you support, let's say, the LGBTQ community, you can't just decide, oh yeah, I support people who are, who are gay, who are bi, who are pansexual. I support all of that, but I don't support the trans people. I just think they're weird, I don't like them and it's gross. You can't decide that. You have to, because they're part of the LGBTQ community. LGBTQ TIA. It's there. So you have to embrace some of these other things, that because LGBTQ span isn't just about gay people. It's about celebrating other people's sexuality and their gender, their identity, as not just as a gender but as a person. So you're helping people celebrate that and accept themselves, and you're loving those people. But you can't just decide the next day that you're just not gonna, you're not gonna help somebody who's bisexual. You can't just decide, oh, asexual is not really part of this, or you can't just do that. And it's the same thing if you support disabilities. You cannot decide all of a sudden, oh, I don't just support Down syndrome. I don't support, no, you support everything. Everything that any aspect of a disability you're going to accept. And so that's what it comes to me when I look at, so neurodivergent has now expanded to not only autism and ADHD, but to also schizophrenia and bipolar and Tourette's. And those used to be neurological disorders, so that it's neurodivergent. And so I believe that I am to be inclusive with them as well. I'm supposed to accept them. And I realize that a lot of people that experience mental illness are not in fact crazy. I do realize that. I know, because I've seen so many instances, and this is the norm. When anybody commits a crime, whether it's suicide or murder or whatever, and something horrible, the police will always ask the family members, or the detectives will say, you see this in TV shows, and maybe I'm wrong, but they will say, well, was there any mental illness in the family? Doctors will ask this. If you're experiencing hallucinations, or whether they're auditory or visual, they're going to ask, well, does this run in the family? It's always about that. Yes, it's important to know that you have some mental illness in the family, but mental illness can amplify certain things. But I can tell you, it is not an excuse for bad behavior. Yes, there have been some very evil people that essentially had mental illness, but mental illness is not the cause of everything. I mean, it can look like so many different things. It can look like demon possession. It can look like ADHD and autism sometimes, but mental illness, I know for a fact there are people that live with it that don't go around murdering people. They don't go around torturing animals. They don't go around hurting people or telling people that they love Nazis and Hitler. I can tell you that. Now, it's always that story is like, well, maybe they have a mental illness and they haven't gotten help for it, and that's why they're acting like this. Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that. But that is not an excuse for the lack of morality or the lack of common sense. If that person is an adult, they know right from wrong. Don't tell me, oh, it's their mental illness. No, don't tell me that. I have known some mentally ill people that are wonderful, and they're fantastic. and they were very kind to me, and I didn't see them doing anything that was harming anyone. I didn't see them hurting anybody. And what's sad is the health care, the mental health care. The health care is okay, but the mental health care is horrendous here in America, because we do not see, we do not hear, we will not acknowledge when it comes to mental illness. We think it is because they're crazy. A mental illness does not equal crazy. Mental illness, all that does is amplify some of the maybe negative characteristics you already have. So if you have some sort of trauma in your past, so a lot of these, serial killers and such, yeah, they had some trauma in their past, but there was a lot of aspects, like for instance, Dahmer, his mother overdosed on a lot of drugs, so he was a drug baby. And then there was genetics, but then there was also the trauma that went with his childhood. And I think he held on to that. So, that's not really an explanation. There has to be a point where mental illness stops, and logic and kind of common sense takes over. There's got to be a point. There's going to see, this is mental illness, this is common sense, okay? They're right next to each other, okay? So there should be some point where people will have to realize, no, this person is choosing to be this way. And is it a choice? It is a choice. Is it a choice? Your DNA and your mental illness does not define who you are. You define yourself. And unless you have hit your head at some point and you had a stroke of some sort and you have no control over what you're doing, if you have enough intelligence to figure out what racism is, if you know what ableism is, if you know about healthcare, if you know about these things, then you have enough intelligence to change who you are and make healthy choices and changes. I understand not everybody was given that, and I understand that not everybody that help is available. And sometimes there's situations where someone doesn't tell them that they are capable of changing and capable of getting therapy and help and medication. And I understand how therapy and medication doesn't solve it either. So I completely understand that. And I realize that not everybody is able or has the money to do that or the transportation to get there. I get that. But sometimes you got to start within your home. You've got to start within wherever you're living, and make small changes. And I'm not saying that this is overnight, but if you can, as I said, if you know right from wrong, you have enough emotional and mental maturity to figure out that murder is wrong, suicide is wrong. You're not supposed to eat people. You're not supposed to rape little boys. You're not supposed to do that. You should be able to understand mental illness doesn't... There's always different things in play when it comes to serial killers. There's trauma. There is the lack... people didn't tell them that they could be better. But these murders and serial killers, they chose to be that way. You realize that? You can't blame mental illness. And I'm getting very tired of people blaming these horrible, horrible atrocities with mental illness, because there's got to be a point where it's the mental illness or it's you. There's got to be a point where people are going to have to stop and say, stop excusing people because of their mental illness. Don't excuse people don't excuse people for that. If they woke up and they lusted for blood and they killed a woman, killed a child, that is a choice. You don't just wake up and say, I just couldn't help myself. My mental illness, it drove me mad. And so I saw the child, I saw my wife, and I killed her. I just couldn't help it. I'm sorry. I need help. Put me in a mental institute. And so I'm supportive of therapy. I'm supportive of medication. I'm supportive of anything that anybody wants to do to help them get better. If they need to do that, if they can't do it, fine. If they never do it, fine. That's great. I don't no prejudice against anybody that gets help or doesn't. But when you're harming and hurting someone, yeah, that's kind of a problem. That's a problem. Yeah. So, and there have been some family members that I know that were mentally ill, and I would often be told, oh, it's just her mental illness, that's why she's so mean, that's why she's so cruel. No, every single frickin' day she's mean. That's why my abuser was mentally ill. I don't know what she has, but she chose to be abusive. She chose it. And I don't believe that anything should excuse bad behavior. That's the thing. I was taught that you don't make excuses. So if I don't go out of my way and talk to someone. So, for instance, if you were to say that mental illness is, you're just going to excuse people who have mental illness, that's like me blurting out something totally rude and inappropriate and just mean and say, oops, sorry, that was my autism. Do you know how obnoxious that is? Yeah, it's obnoxious. It's not right. It's not right for me to excuse this or that. Now, I can excuse something that makes sense. Like, for instance, if somebody told me, hey, did you put the dishes away? And you say, oh, gosh, that was my ADHD. And I totally forgot about that. I'm so sorry. And then, my family would be, oh, that's okay. That's cool. That's my ADHD. I got distracted. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that happens to me all the time, and, but, yeah, no, you can't go out of your way and just be like, so we're basing a lot of that on old movies. I think old Vincent Price movies, probably, most likely. I mean, if you've seen A Diary of a Madman, if you've seen, what was that magician movie? Any Vincent Price movie, okay? Any Vincent Price movie that you've seen out there where, yeah, they black out. And yeah, there are blackouts where people have that are mentally ill, but sometimes those things are separate. But no, mental illness is not like a demon possession, okay? You don't just all of a sudden have the thirst for blood, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what did I do? Oh, that's my mental illness again. Oh, so weird. Why is there blood on the carpet? Oh, I wonder how I'm gonna get that out. Oh, peroxide. That will work. Oh, I got it on the walls. Bleach, yes. I really need to stop doing this. This is really getting ridiculous. I need to get some therapy or some medication because I just keep murdering people for some reason. It's just weird. I really have to. I just can't. I can't control myself. I just wake up and there's a dead body right there. Oh, so inconvenient. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. As I said, mental illness is one of those things that it goes hand in hand with other things. It can, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it always will. Sometimes it will be conjoined with other things like trauma, PTSD, autism, whatever it can be, and that can make it worse. And sometimes it's the mental illness that makes these other things worse. So that's all I'm saying. So what I'm saying is don't make exceptions for people, regardless of what they look like. and then turn around and make no exception for somebody that is actually struggling. It's really easy to look at someone and say, oh yeah, you're struggling because, you know, you're sweating, you're bleeding, you're doing this. So it's really easy to look at somebody who's bleeding. You see somebody that is, you know, leaving a bloody trail behind them. Of course you're going to help them. But you get somebody that, it's really easy. It's really easy to look at somebody who is bleeding and try to help them. But when you see somebody that maybe doesn't look as injured as they do, you know, maybe they're just, you know, they're saying, oh yeah, I have stomach cramps or something. And you think, well, yeah, just take this and go home, walk it off. And then what happens is, you know, this is really sad. So the person that was bleeding all over the floor, that person survived. And the person that just had a stomach ache, they died. That is literally autism, that is mental illness, that is ADHD, that is bipolar, that is literally where we have these struggles and nobody sees it, nobody hears us, people just assume that we're crazy, we're lazy, stupid, or just, we're just doing this to piss people off, and that's not the case. We're not doing this to piss people off, we're doing this because this is how we were born. We're not being slow on purpose. We're not doing this to, we have good intentions behind what we do. And I'm going to say this, is there are good intentions within every spectrum, from mental illness to autism to ADHD to bipolar to schizophrenia. There is good, there is choice, there is will, there is light and hope for people. And we need to just help each other and be able to be understanding and patient of one another, or else we're going to have situations where people don't even want to go to work. I mean, it's often because this kind of ableism that people lose their lives. They lose their job. They go home. They get depressed. They don't want to go to work. They get depressed because of that. They just got screamed at by their boss. They just got told that they're not working hard enough, even though they've been hardly sleeping and hardly eating and working 12 hours a day. And it's just never enough. And people like that, they end up taking their own lives. They end up not waking up again. And you have to know, you cannot make exceptions for one person and then make no exceptions for another. You can't pick and choose who you're going to accept today. You have to, if you support disabilities, I don't care where you are, who you are, what culture you're in, you do not, under any circumstance, look at somebody who you think is disabled and say, sure, I'll help them. They can't walk, they're in a wheelchair, whatever, and just think, gee, I did a good deed. And then you turn around and you start screaming at somebody who is also disabled. So I hope this left you with an imprint, and I'm sorry if I'm trying to talk about ableism, I'm trying to talk about racism and just the injustice that's done against those that are under the spectrum and those that are neurodivergent. As I said, I accept everyone and I love everyone, regardless of their how their mind works, and their race, their gender, or their sexuality. I really love everyone unconditionally. But I do want you to realize there are no excuses for ignorance in this day and age. There is no excuse for prejudice. Prejudice is prejudice. Ableism is ableism. It doesn't matter if the other day you helped a crippled lady cross the street. If you're being abusive towards other people with disabilities, that completely nullifies what you just did. You literally built a castle and tore it down the next day. That's all I want to leave you with, and I hope you have a beautiful, blessed day, and I'm sorry if it's so dark in here, but it's just dark. So, I hope I didn't insult anybody.